Here's what's coming up on today's show.
So think it through. Don't just say, I don't have a check and I need a check. We can help you to analyze this and understand how you get cash flow and make things work as best they can.
Welcome to the How Money Works podcast with Craig and Jennifer Moser of Maestro Wealth Advisors, serving you throughout the Triad of North Carolina for more than 30 years.
This week, we're going to talk about some bad assumptions here on the program, so make sure you got the facts, right? That's what we do every week on the show. We talk about some different things that you think about so that hopefully you don't, because you know what they say about making an assumption, right? So let's make sure we go through some of this stuff and hopefully avoid some of that. So let's start with the old Roth IRA conversation. A Roth IRA will save you money in the end, or maybe the opposite view is that the traditional IRA will save you some money. So what's the correct assumption here? Is there
Let's
one?
talk about the differences.
Let
Is
me
there
do
one?
it. First, let me clarify the account structure.
All right.
It's not an investment. It is an account. You put money into a Roth, named after some senator, IRA. So what that means is there's no tax deduction on that contribution. There are some rules, but the best use of it is to allow that money to grow and compound over time. Then, when you choose to take withdrawals or distributions from it, that money is not taxed. None of it if you do it right. So that's a beautiful thing. You were talking, the original comment was save you money in the end. So to me, one of the things you have to look at is what is your current highest tax bracket. Think about it. Tax brackets start at 10, go to 12, 22, 24, 32, 35, 37% federal, depending on, if you're over $700 some odd $1,000 a year in income. But where are you in that spectrum? Is your tax bracket low, given what I gave you, or is it up there at the top? So let's say that your top tax bracket is 35%. That's a pretty healthy income. So that's federal, and then the state of North Carolina wants 4.5%. So you're at 39.5 cents on every dollar taxation for what you earn. So that means that if you put $1,000 into a Roth, your tax costs kind of $395.50, sort of. And so that may be a little too high to get that started because, unless you have the $1,000 already and you put it in the Roth, okay. But to intentionally do it, you have to think about it versus getting the tax deduction. That may not be worth it to you. Now, when you retire, having been in that bigger tax bracket, you may be in a lower tax bracket. You see what I'm saying? So you have to look at it and say, what am I paying to get that money in the Roth? And then what tax bracket do I expect to be in when I am no longer going to work every day? So, if your top tax bracket is 12, then your cost is about $165 with the state tax in there. That trade-off might be worth it to get it in there. So you've got to think about, where am I on the tax spectrum first? And I guess that's do I do a traditional IRA or do I do a Roth? I hope that helped.
Well, I think, too, if you're kind of on the fence, if it's, I don't know, I might be at the same tax bracket or I might be a little bit less, I would look at it another way, too. And that is, do you want to, they do this all the time, tax the seed or tax the harvest? So, the beauty of that Roth is, as you were saying, Craig, you put the money in, you pay taxes this one time. And the way that the tax law is, it grows tax deferred, and hopefully when you take it out, it's tax free. And hopefully you've got a lot of time to compound, and then you've got a big bolus of money that you can pull from in retirement. So I'm a big proponent of different buckets. You've got your taxable bucket, you pay every year your taxes. You've got your Roth bucket, and you've got a little bit and you've got some other in your pre-tax bucket. Craig, you wanted to say something.
I do. So on a Roth IRA, some good things. There's no required minimum distribution on a Roth IRA.
Yep.
It does not impact Medicare Part B. And you've heard IRMA before. Well, how much do I pay for the Medicare Part B is the biggest part of that. And it does not increase your Social Security payments when it comes to taxation. In other words, if you have a lot of taxable income, then you're probably going to pay taxes on most of your Social Security. If you have a lot of tax-free distributions, then no tax on your Social Security. Wouldn't that be nice? So there's both sides of the fulcrum, and you've got to decide what's the best ball for you.
And based on our show, How Money Works, I would recommend, even if you are contributing to your retirement plan and you might decide to do pre-tax deferral or, Roth deferral, look to see if your income limits are at a level that you can also contribute to Roth IRAs for you and your spouse.
Good point.
Look to see if you don't have an IRA outside of your retirement accounts. Look to see if your income levels are too high to do the Roth, doing a backdoor Roth, which is basically putting money in after tax into an IRA and then converting it within a week or so into that Roth. So you can, I call it squirreling money away in different vehicles. And don't think because you are contributing to your company retirement plan that you can't do a Roth or a backdoor IRA or after tax IRA.
Good points. Yeah, for sure. Guys, is it risky to assume that delaying Social Security will yield the most income over the long haul? Is that a risky assumption?
All right, Craig, what's your line?
Okay. The joke is, all I need to know is the month and year you're going to pass away, and I can give you an exact Social Security distribution strategy.
Yeah.
It'll be perfect.
Yeah.
But you don't know that, do you?
And I wouldn't want to know it.
Well, yeah, that'd be a nervous day the day
Right.
before.
Yeah.
So the math on this is, in most cases, whether you take Social Security early, 62-ish, or you take 67, or you take the delayed credits and get the highest possible check, there's a point where there's a break even or a crossover, and that's usually somewhere between age 81 and 82, meaning that it's a horse race until that age. If you took it at 62 versus 70, you've got 8 years of checks versus the other one. You're going to be ahead. If you take it at 67, you have 3 years. And obviously, if you take it at 70, your check is going to be the highest it can possibly be for you. So the math says that there's a break-even point. If you anticipate living past about 81 or 82 years old, you should highly consider taking that Social Security later. If you have money to be able to live off of and wait, that's when you would look at it and say, I hate taking money out of my retirement accounts. I've only ever fed that thing, never taken anything else, but that's what it's for. If you can delay the Social Security to 70, big checks. That's what we're doing. But there's a but. If you do not have adequate savings, you may need to take that Social Security income earlier to bridge the gap and let what you have in retirement, your nest egg, continue to grow. So that's important. Last thing, for survivors. Think about this. If you and your spouse take Social Security at 62 and one of you passes away, regardless of what you did have coming in, only one check is going to remain. And if you took it at 62, it's going to be low because you just didn't have enough time to let it build up. You get about an 8% appreciation in every year you delay taking your Social Security up to age 70. One of you passes away, the one check remains. You're going to want to maximize that. So think it through. Don't just say, I don't have a check and I need a check. We can help you to analyze this and understand how you get cash flow and make things work as best they can.
And this is where the key of planning is. A couple came in and I spoke with them this week, and both of them had turned on their Social Securities at full retirement age. One is just putting the paperwork in. We showed them with the analysis that if they started their Social Security now at full retirement, how that was going to have a less favorable outcome long term than if they waited till 70. One of the misconceptions, yes, Craig was saying that the break even is roughly 81, 82, but they hadn't considered in a spousal situation, it's important for the higher wage earner to delay as much as possible because they get that 8% per year appreciation, and then the COLAs, the cost of living increases on top of that. And then if that person predeceases, then the spouse gets that higher level of income for the rest of their life. So when you're planning for an individual, it's different than when you're planning as a couple. And it was interesting. They said, well, don't we need to go ahead and start the Social Security now because, we're going to quit working too. Well, when we looked at the analysis, we were talking, I said, I know you've saved this retirement account forever and ever and ever, and it's kind of like this golden goose, and you don't want to, get into it, but that's why you saved. If you just tap into, she already had pension money coming in, they only needed to borrow about take $5,000 or $10,000 off of their investments for the next couple of years and bridge that gap until he was able to get the Social Security. And they asked me, I said, what would you do? I said, well, because they said, why don't we start Social Security and invest it in the market? I said, well, we could do that. But the way I look at it is you have a guaranteed 8% increase, and you've got a guaranteed cost of living on top of that at some level versus what the market may or may not do for you over the next 3 years. I'm going to take 24% more with the cost of living because it's a known entity.
Again, that's control. Do you want to have control of that cash flow, or are you just hoping that the investments will stay good and strong and you can always rely on the stock market to give you what you need?
Talk about the assumption of putting your money in bonds to make your portfolio safe. Now, that was the case for a very, very long time. Is it back to that yet, Craig, or still a little shaky there?
Well, let's talk about what a bond is.
Okay.
Because most people have never actually bought an individual bond. They buy a bond mutual fund or some kind of fund that has a bunch of bonds in there, no control. So when you buy a bond itself, you basically are lending money to either a corporation or to a government. So a treasury, a municipal bond, or you lent some money to Coca-Cola, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. The thing that impacts the price while you own a bond is the prevailing current interest rate. Think about that. If we go back to 2020, interest rates were, excuse my language, stupid low, and then all of a sudden, what happened? Jay Powell raised rates a lot. So the other thing that can impact the price of a bond is the underlying credit quality of the bond. Well, I mean, we can monitor that, but, lots of folks lost money in bonds if they were in the mutual funds from 2020 to 2023. And the question is why? The answer is the Federal Reserve raised interest rates. Back in 2020, the Fed funds rate was 0.08%. So like not even 10%. It was low. The current is 4.43. So that came from Statistica, if somebody's checking me. When the bonds you currently own have been issued with low interest rates and the rate increases, the price of the bond will go down to reflect what the discount would have been to sell that bond prior to its maturity. But when it matures at whatever the face value was. So that's a different thing than stocks. To my way of thinking, lending money is safer than business ownership, especially if we're talking retirement. Owning a business and it fails, you lose everything. Owning a business and somebody lent you money doesn't let you out of paying them back. So it's a lot different. I prefer to actually own the real bonds versus buying a mutual fund where I don't have any control. It's just, these are things that if you don't know, I remember people would come to me and I would buy bonds and like, what are these things? Or one would mature and they would get a notice and go, is there something I need to do? No, a bond matured. And so now we have our $20,000 back and we've got to do something else with it. We're just letting you know. You can buy the real thing. You have tons more control than just being in the mutual fund. And they're liquid. We can sell them every day. It's just, well, not every day. It's when the market's open. But you understand there's a difference between that and buying a mutual fund that just has thousands and thousands of bonds, and you really don't even know what's under the hood.
All right. So again, talking about bad assumptions here with Craig and Jennifer Moser, 336-448-1086 to have a conversation about your situation. Make sure that you're not making those bad assumptions like taking a lump sum on the pension. Is it always the best approach? What's your thoughts there?
I love the word always.
Yeah, right?
It's almost as good as the word never.
Never.
Right.
One of the things we have in the office.
If you want to see Craig just shoot,
lose my mind.
You do. Never use always or never.
Yeah. Somebody calls me and says, you never, and oh man, I'm already boiling. It's like, what did we not do?
Yeah.
So,
especially in this industry, right?
Yeah, I don't like that. So those absolutes just don't count. So again, let's talk about a pension. Mm-hmm. A pension usually is a series of payments, right? I work for a great company. I'll throw Reynolds out there because in the past it had a really great pension. So if you work there for so many years, you got a check for the rest of your life and perhaps for the life of your spouse. I don't see anything that could be wrong with that. That's a great thing, getting paid. The calculation that gives you the present value of your pension is the number of estimated monthly payments discounted by a rate of return. I don't want to do that. I just want you to understand there's a way to figure out if you estimate you're going to live to 87 and you're 65, you can pretty much figure what the value of that payment stream is and then discount it. And that's what that lump sum is. So if you have a pension that will pay you a lifetime of monthly payments and will pay that payment for your life and for the life of your spouse, that's kind of what it's worth for a lump sum. So how long are you going to live? The argument is, well, if I die early, I left money on the table because they didn't have to keep paying us. Wow. So a lot of people look at that lump sum value and say, all right, if I'm smart and I put this in something that's an investment, a lot of times we use an annuity that is an investment, but it also has a rider on it that guarantees an income stream for the rest of your life. If you were to outlive the money, that's a pretty decent way to approach it. If you do not believe you will live a long, long time, the lump sum may give you more over your lifetime versus monthly payments. But if you live a long time, I'll take my father, he's 97. He started taking his mailman's pension and his National Guard pension at 62. The man's 97, people.
Yeah, we know why the postal system and the government's
are
having a hard time.
Problems. My father.
And my mother.
35 years, man. That's a long time.
He's worn them out. They probably say, we're still paying the guy. That's got to be one of the guys on the list.
I was getting ready to say, they're checking to see if he's still around, yeah.
So you have to factor in how long you're going to live. Also, are you going to be disciplined? Am I going to actually take this money and put it into things that are going to give me a return, or do I go buy the RV and the new Dodge Charger or something and go have some fun? But yet now you're risking your future retirement because you don't have that cash flow. There's a lot to look at there.
There is a lot. In talking about control before, when you turn on that pension, if you decide to do that, and we're talking kind of in generalities, but the real thing comes crystal clear when we actually run the analysis and we can show you what those two types of scenarios or multiple scenarios look like. Because in general, you not only just get a pension for life, but typically if you're married, you might have some other options. You might have, joint life, 100% both of you, or maybe you get it and 50% to the spouse. You might have period certains where, you can do it over a lifetime, but at least for 5 years if I were to, die prematurely, blah, blah, blah. There's lots of different scenarios to run. You need to look at the income stream and the taxation of that. So when you turn that pension on, that is a taxable flow. Maybe it makes sense, and this will come out when we do the analysis. If you were to take the rollover and do a lump sum into an IRA, maybe you can systematically move that to Roth over time and pay less taxes over time, have control of the investment, do some other things with that investment to accomplish your goals. It's all a matter of what are your goals and how do we make that happen with what you've accumulated and what the resources you have available to you.
So 2 things. When you talk about a lump sum pension, if they write you the check, that's a bird in the hand. You actually receive the money. You don't have to worry about them paying you. And you go, oh, well, they always pay. Well, I was looking on a list here from a company that insures pensions, Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation. And I picked a few names: United Airlines, Delphi, Bethlehem Steel, U.S. Airways, Delta Airways. All of these pensions failed and they had to go to the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation. They don't pay as much as they would have based on what they said they were going to do. So you have to also look at who's providing the pension for you and say, am I comfortable with these guys? Are they actually going to be able to pay me? Or maybe one day I get a letter from the government saying, too bad about that big pension. Now you have a little one. There's things that you need to think about. Nobody is the same. So we have to actually look at it and make a value judgment based on where we are currently in the economic cycle of that company.
Yeah.
So there is no one size fits all with pension numbers.
All right, so one final bad assumption. I'm going to a little bonus round here for you guys. Assuming that taxes are going to stay the same, or okay, let's go with the current topics in the headlines, Craig. So assuming that the TCJA gets passed or gets extended, right, and that we stay in a low rate, or maybe not, right? So you could be wrong, and we could have a higher tax rate coming down the pike.
We have people that come in and, some people love the current regime. Some of them hate it. I stay out of politics. But one thing that I do tell them is all I need to know are the rules.
Right.
How are they going to do this? And can I rely on that set of rules for a good period of time? And then I have to be realistic. When you look at the debt of our government, just the government, it's over $36 trillion. We pay $1 trillion in interest costs just on the loan that we have out there. Yeah, you have to think at some point these people may raise the tax rate. Assuming that it's going to be what it is today may be a big mistake for you. So we typically do one of our analysis and we say, all right, we've ran the perfect scenario. We've ran the one where one of you passes away. We put long-term care in your future. Might as well raise the tax rate on one of them and say, how much more would it cost you if they raised the tax rate? So again, we go back to the Roth IRA versus the pre-tax savings account. If you had saved most of your money in the Roth IRA, you don't really care what the tax rates are. But if it's coming out of an IRA or a 401k or an IRA that you have yet to pay taxes on the money that's in there, it could matter a lot. It seems to be one of the things that if we raise taxes, and we don't do anything crazy, we just raise it a little bit, but you can see the difference side by side when we're running these analysis. Man, it costs a lot more to get my money out, especially once you turn about 75 and have those required minimum distributions. You have to take money out then, irrespective of whether you want to take it or need it. And so, yeah, planning is important. We need to make sure that we've looked at it under several different lenses and we're comfortable that everything works to our satisfaction.
Thank you so much for checking out the podcast today. If you have any questions about what we've discussed, remember, you can get a complimentary financial review with the team at Maestro Wealth Advisors by calling 336-448-1086 or go online to howmoneyworksradio.com for other great resources and ways to reach the team. You can also check the show notes of today's episode for our contact information as well. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite app so you never miss an episode. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and all the most popular apps. For Craig and Jennifer Moser, I'm Mark Killian. We'll talk to you next time on the How Money Works podcast.
Craig Moser is a financial advisor and certified financial planner. Securities offered through Avantax Investment Services, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Avantax Advisory Services. Insurance services offered through Avantax Affiliated Insurance Agency.